Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Advanced Grassroots Coaching course with East Cherokee Soccer Club. My name is Mike Feeney. I am the Executive Director of Operations here for ECSC in beautiful, but yes, way too overcrowded, Canton, Georgia. Glad you could be with me today. So let's take a look at a quick overview of what we can expect from this course. We're going to take a look at modern coaching principles, learn a little bit about the field of play and different aspects of the field of play, some game models, attacking and defending tactics, and also transitional play. Let's start first by looking at modern soccer coaching principles. So there's going to be a lot here. I'm going to go through these kind of at a high level one by one. So a player-centered development. This focuses on the player's ability to make decisions. It kind of gets rid of the Xbox or the PlayStation controller, if you will. I know you've kind of heard that before, but we want to focus on the player's ability on the field of play to make decisions that they feel is right for them, given the flow of the game, their position on the field, and their ability to see the field better than a coach can from the sideline. We also want to focus on technical quality and adaptability. We want the players to be very proficient at the four main elements of the game: passing, dribbling, and also on a shooting and defensive role. Game like training. So, all of our sessions as coaches should replicate real match like scenarios to improve tactical understanding. This includes very quick transitional moments and exercises where it really mimics a game within a game. Positional play and structure really talks about spacing and movement in the roles during all phases of play. And the idea here is that the players are kind of assigned a role and responsibility. As a defender, your job, while on paper, is to defend. However, can you jump into an attacking play? Can you make an overlapping run? What types of things are needed to happen in order for that to be successful? The other part is high intensity transitions. This is the emphasis on pressing and when to press, how to counter press, and quick offensive transitions to catch the defensive lines off guard. Let's talk about data and video integration. By looking at performance analytics to guide training, scouting, and match strategy. So obviously, it's a little bit higher level than what we typically see, but we do have coaches that videotape the games. As a league, we do keep statistics. And as far as scouting, we're not talking about Division One scholarships quite yet, but there is the whole element of the advanced development program. So we need to allow players to understand that we can use some of this technology to be able to guide them in order to be scouted for the advanced development program or um, to look at the formation that they're playing in and why they turn the ball over in certain circumstances. So as a coach, use some of this information. Go ahead and record your practices, record parts of your game, and use that as a learning tool. The other part is the holistic coaching approach. And it prioritizes the well-being of the athletes, and that's not just, hey, everybody feeling good today? We didn't stop at Chick-fil-A and get a milkshake on the way to practice, did we? We're talking about the physical, mental, and emotional development to create complete athletes. Talk to them about how their day was. Find out what's going on, in their life. Be that support system that'll allow you as a coach to develop a better relationship with that child. And also, flexible tactics. I don't know what happened to this text, but um, the ability to adjust to different types of systems, and we'll talk about some of those systems as we go forward today. All right, let's dive into key coaching principles. This is interesting stuff. So we talked about creating a player-centered approach. And this is the individual focus on the needs and the preferences of the players to enhance the engagement and development. Take into account intrinsic motivation. If you don't know what that word is, I recommend that you Google it. This is about what motivates the players. How do they fall in love with the game of soccer? In other words, kind of finding out the strategy of the chess match. Players are different, all different types of ages and genders. You can't possibly go from a U8 girls team to a U15 co-ed or boys team and expect the same strategies and the wants and the needs of those players to be the same. You have to adapt to the players, and finding out what they want and what they're really looking for is really going to be critical for you as a coach to be able to succeed. Game realistic. Design your training situations that closely mimic real life or real match conditions for effective learning. Look at game pace and working on a game within a game. We'll talk about that when we learn in the next slide about the field of play and how soccer is very interesting because it is a game of one or two or maybe even 3 or 4 players inside of a game of 7-on-7, 9-on-9, 11-on-11. The holistic approach, as we talked about, develops the players physically, mentally, and socially to foster comprehensive growth and a teamwork strategy. The idea here is to create better people first and players second. All right, let's look at more of the soccer specific stuff. Learning about the field of play. So a soccer pitch is broken down into multiple different ways, and a lot of you are probably seeing these diagrams for the first time saying, wow, I've never really thought of it that way. It is very comprehensive. It is very in-depth. Let's look at the image on the left first. So in soccer, we look at the field in quadrants and in different aspects. So outside, you'll have the wide zone. As you come into the middle, kind of at the side of the penalty area, you'll have the half space. And then right down the center, which of course coincides with the goal area, you'll have the central zone. So when you're talking to the players about pushing it outside wide, you need to be more specific. Are we talking about the half space or are we talking about the wide zone? Explain to them, that the field is broken down into different aspects. Now, one thing that I would encourage you is to talk about some of these things with the players. Get them to understand the field, because if you can get them to understand different areas of the field and you're explaining something in a situational awareness realm, then you can say, hey, Jim, it was a great pass, ended up going out for a goal kick. What are some other options that we have? Hey, coach, I actually could have played it into the half space. That midfielder could have played it back into the wide zone, and I could have crossed the ball in the top of the 18, top of the 6, to someone streaking down into the central zone. It's a pipe dream, right? But as a coach, if we can introduce some of these concepts to these players, even at U8, U9, U10, by the time they're in at U12, U13, U14, they'll be able to understand these advanced concepts. All right, let's talk about the 18 zones of a soccer pitch. I'm not going to go 1 through 18, I promise. The good thing is, whether you're offensive or defensive, they're kind of all the same, but they're kind of talking about whether you have possession of the ball or not. So let's talk about what we see here. So red arrow indicates that the team on the left is attacking. So this corner becomes the one space. This is also called the win-back zone. What you want to end up doing here is your defender should be outside challenging 1v1 when you're close to your own goal. And same with quadrant number 3. This is kind of to the corner flag. So it's low risk in that your angles as an attacker are not very good. But what happens is if you win in quadrant 3 or you win in quadrant 1, that makes a very easy play into quadrant number 5 or into quadrant number 2. Now, quadrant number 5 also has a high percentage zone attached to that. And what that means is that there's a high percentage that a shot is going to come through to goal. When we're talking about number 2, well, typically the defense stays back a little bit, and that's a little bit more of a congested area. So a lot of times, most of the goals are going to be scored with the initial shot from zone 5 or from the high percentage zone, which expands just a little bit into zone 4 and zone 6. Now, likewise, if we're talking about the attacking end of this, of course, we'll have a high zone in zone 14 as well, a high percentage zone, but we also have one-on-ones on zone 16 and zone 18. So typically what you're going to end up seeing is your attacking center midfielders are going to be lurking kind of in zone 14, and then your strikers are going to be typically in zone 17 unless they're playing back a little ways. Your wingers are going to be 13 and 16, 15 and 18, and also your midfield could be playing somewhere in a 10 to 13 and 12 to 15 realm, unless you're in the middle or you're number 6 or number 8, in which you'd be playing in a 11 and 14 type realm. Now, where this is very important is, say we're attacking and we have a corner kick, which would be taken from zone 16. Okay, so we have possession of the ball. We're taking a corner kick from zone 16. Now, try and visualize this. Where should your defense be lined up? Your left back, your right back, and your center back. You should actually be somewhere within zone 10, 11, and 12. We should not be in our own defending half on a corner kick. We should be lurking in 10, 11, and 12. Now, on a goal kick, let's flip this around. Where is the best place to kick a goal kick? Where is the best placement? Or we'll say, in that case, lower risk. Well, zone 1 is safe, usually. Zone 4 is safe. Zone 3, zone 6, and also 7, 8, and 9. We do not want a goal kick going into zone 2 and certainly not zone 5, for obvious reasons. The whole concept of don't kick the ball up the middle certainly applies with this diagram. So now if we learn this type of diagram and we look and we start to visualize what kind of strategies we can use and how to exploit some of these different phases, we can divide the field in thirds. We'll have a defending third, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll have a middle third, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and a final third or an attacking third, which is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. All right, I know that was a lot. Let's jump ahead. Let's start talking about game models. Well, there's a bunch of different game models that we can encompass. And these are just a few. We can look at positional play, high press, transition-based models, low block and counterattack, and direct play or vertical models. I'll go through each one of these kind of one by one and explain the general concepts. So positional play. This is the old-fashioned European type model, as they say. This creates numerical and positional advantages through structured space. This is high control, dominant with possession, with many chance-creating patterns. This requires high technical ability and discipline from the players. Some of those teams using this are Manchester City and Barcelona, obviously among the elite. This requires each and every person on the field to play their position almost perfectly. They must maintain the position, they must stay in position, and the idea here is to possess the ball as much as possible and hope that the more time we have possession, it leads to more shots, more opportunities, more free kicks, more corner kicks. And if we have the ball 60% of the time, we have a better chance of scoring and winning. Let's talk about high press and transition. This is the part here that I personally absolutely love. This is a high press, attack quickly and through intense pressure and attacking. This forces mistakes, creates fast scoring chances, and it's physically demanding and very risky if beaten, but can be extremely lucrative. Liverpool and RB Leipzig are two of the primary clubs that use this. So let's talk about the high press model. At high press, your number 9 or your striker should be sitting right on the top of the penalty area on a goal kick. They should be looking to pick off passes. They should be reading body language and trying to figure out where the passing lanes are and how to cut them off. They should also be attacking the ball far more than containing. The idea here is high risk, high reward. But at the same time, they're looking at transitional play. So if we're in our defending half or defending third and we recover the ball, the idea is to transition and transition fast. We want to bring everybody up as far as we possibly can, and we want to start pushing the ball up and create very quick and very long paced outlets and try and stretch the field as much as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. It is very risky if you're beaten on a counterattack, though. Low block and a counterattack. So this is an idea where we're a defensive team. We're going to defend compact and exploit space behind the opponents. We're going to be very difficult to break down, and we need to be very efficient in scoring on counterattacks. We don't have a whole lot of possession, and we rely on the very fast forwards. So this is kind of an idea here where a low block is a team essentially kind of stuck in their defensive third for majority of the game. We're not going to see a whole lot of building through the middle. We're not going to see a lot of usage out of the central zone. We are going to see a lot of plays to the outside when recovering the ball. And we're going to try and stretch that field as soon as we possibly can, because that is really our only offensive attack, is to be able to transition and counter fast to try and get in and behind the offensive zone. Last one is direct play or vertical model. This is playing forward very quickly, winning the second balls and dominating territory, especially in the offensive side. It's simple and effective and reduces the risk of trying to build up, but it's also very less creative and become predictable. Brentford is a club that's very recognizable for using a direct or vertical model. So the idea here is we're just going to try and push the ball up in any opportunity that we get. We're going to use the same plays, the same passing patterns, the same type of ideas and tactics, and hope that the team doesn't catch on. If they do, then we might have to try and shift and kind of pivot, be a little bit more fluid throughout the game. All right, let's talk about developing game models. So a game model defines a team's philosophy and identifying key performance indicators while creating a training curriculum that enhances the player development and the technical understanding in a cohesive manner. So let's take a look at how some of these attacking tactics can influence our game model, and likewise, how our defensive tactics can start to change our game model. So attacking tactics, we're going to go through each one of these one by one, but with in-depth, overlaps, and underlaps. Third man runs, quick switches of play, combination play in the final third or the attacking third, and counterattacking patterns, as well as half space, exploitation, and attacking. All right, let's dive into width and depth. So the whole idea here is to stretch the opponent's defense. By positioning wide players and making forward runs behind the defensive line, we create space and opportunities for the team. Imagine the field opening up as our players strategically pull defenders out of position. This not only destabilizes the defense, but also allows us to exploit gaps and create scoring opportunities behind them. Remember, it's all about maintaining the width and the depth, ensuring that we keep the defense guessing and constantly adjusting to our game plan. This tactic makes it difficult for them to settle in a very uncomfortable shape. So the idea here, and what we're seeing from the diagram, is player A1 starts with possession of the ball. He then plays it to A2. As A2 is receiving the ball, A3 is starting to move and create an open space. A2 now has two options for a pass, and that's lane number 2 or lane number 3, depending on the position of D2. But by using the entire width of the field and standing out at the touch line, we now put that defender, or D2, in a very difficult position to decide, are we going to attack A2 or are we going to attack A3? Either way, A2 now has a perfect opportunity in an open passing lane for either option. The only thing he's going to have to do at this point is read the defender, D2. Let's look at overlaps and underlaps. So these are great diagrams because it kind of shows the general idea. So overlap, position number 1 or player number 1 has the ball at the top of the penalty area. Player number 2, or the defender in number 2, is kind of in his way, right? He doesn't really have any options. Number 3 for blue is in a position where he's able to mark number 2. So you can't really turn around and go backwards. So number 2 is then going to make the run to the outside. Player number 1 will lay off the ball right at the top corner of the penalty area. And number 2, at that point, will have an opportunity to either pass inside of the penalty area and make a cross or take a shot on goal. Underlapping is very similar concept, except we're not going to the outside of the field. We're coming to the inside of the field. So you can see here that red number 2 has a perfect passing lane to pass into red number 1. The only thing he's got to read here is the position of blue number 1 and blue number 2 to make sure that that's going to be a safe and secure run. All right, let's dive into number 3. So number 3 is going to be third man runs. So this is very similar to a give and go in that, we're kind of looking at the same concept, but this is not a 1-2. This is a kind of a 1-2-3. So for the sake of this specific design here, so you have the player with the ball in the corner. Okay, he's going to play it to the man up top. Okay, the man up top is then going to play it to the one that's sitting kind of in a right back position. Once the right back gets it, the left defender in that case is going to start making a run up the sideline, and then the right back is going to play the ball across the middle of the field to the left defender, which is now in more of an attacking type position. So it's kind of like a 1-2-3 if you think about it. The first pass goes to the middle, the second pass goes to the opposite side, so we're switching the field, and then the third pass is going to be from the third man, which is then going to be back to the first man as he makes a run up the field, beating multiple defenders all in the same combination. All right, quick switches of play. So this is actually really fun. I enjoy quick switches of play because it also keeps the defense from actually understanding what your typical passing patterns or what your constant movement is going to be like. You're going to be able to isolate the wingers 1v1 and no matter how you do this. So what I love most about this diagram is the keeper is actually diving, but yet the ball is at midfield. I love it. Gotta love computer animated graphics. So up top, we start midfield, right on the kickoff dot. So immediately we're going to pass it in to what looks to be probably our center midfielder. He's immediately going to give it back to the center back, which is then going to distribute that ball out to one of the wings. So the idea is we are switching the space and we are going into the wide zone as opposed to the center zone. So we are kind of missing the entire concept of that half space, which is great because that, number one, pulls our defenders all the way to the outside. And look at the amount of open space in the central zone that the strikers and also the center mid have to use. This is an absolutely wonderful diagram and something that should be used quite often, even in a rec environment. All right, number 5 is combos in the final third. So it's kind of like a ping pong machine or pinball machine, pinball machine, in that, we're starting here with what appears to be a midfielder. He's going to pass and essentially take, a pretty good risk of going from the left half space all the way to the right wide zone. At that point, we're going to have one of our two strikers come in from behind and make a run through the half space, which is perfect. That person is then going to pass the ball right up top to the front of the dot, penalty dot, and then we're going to have our number 9 sitting right there, making that run, waiting for it, putting it in far post. By doing this, the defenders really aren't going to be able to move because they're not going to be able to predict where the ball is going and who's going to get it and when. So using 1-2s and wall passes and quick interlocks or interplay to unlock compact defenses is going to be absolutely critical for exploiting the defense and getting in and behind the defensive line. All right, number 6 is counterattacking patterns. So the idea here is transition immediately with speed to exploit open spaces after winning possession. So we'll see here that, A2, yellow A2 has the ball. They're passing it into A4. Now, A4 has got many options. We have A3 checking into the ball. It looks like we also have another player from the left side checking into the ball. And then we have A5 making a run. So the idea here is we're kind of using A4 as a pivot point or a revolving door. So he's got many different options. The idea here, though, is this is a transition. This is quick. This should be a bang, bang, bang type of play. It does not allow red to reset and actually read the play as it develops. We're trying to stretch the field very quickly. We're trying to catch the defense off guard, but yet making runs into open spaces. So, for example, this specific run here, I could see this going in a bunch of different ways. So, A2 plays to A4. As soon as A4 gets the ball, he immediately turns, plays it into the wide zone where A5 can run onto it. A5 takes a quick touch, and you have a perfect ball back at the top of the penalty area for A4 to take a shot, or we can play it to the opposite side, and where you'd have essentially what I would probably call a 6 sitting on the top of the penalty area, ready to attack the ball through a cross in the air. And last but not least, number 7 for our attacking tactics is half space attacking. So we kind of talked about this on the last play. But the idea here is to get in and behind the defenders closer to goal. So we'll see a couple of the red players, coming to the outside using the wide zone. But we also see a defender and also a left midfielder attacking into the half space, which is absolutely critical for trying to split the defense. Most of the balls coming into the half space are going to be through balls or kind of runs off the ball, and using some sort of a wall pass idea to get in and behind and exploit that line. It's an easy way to manage an offside trap, but it's also very rewarding if you can exploit that, because the scoring opportunity and your chances of getting a shot on target skyrocket if you can exploit these properly. All right, let's look at some effective attacking strategies. Building up, is creating space through quick, precise passing. Finishing is converted chances into decisive goals scored. Chance creation is generating opportunities to score goals effectively and efficiently. And the last one is attacking formation, where you organize players to maximize the attacking potential. So, all of these are different strategies that you can focus on as a coach. Are you going to try and work on building up and maintaining possession through the game? Are you going to try and get those chances created on some of the transitions or the counterattacks and play more of a defensive half block or full block? Or are you going to concentrate on very specific finishing? It needs to be clinical, it needs to be extremely good, and it essentially, in many ways, it needs to be picture perfect. Or are you going to have a attacking formation, such as you could do a 2-2-2 and press both of your forwards high if you're playing 7 aside. You could do a 2-3-1 and bring your outside wings to play a little bit higher and sink your center midfielder a little bit more. Any of those concepts where your attacking formation is kind of the strategy behind the game. All right, let's look at the defensive side. So we have pressing, which is immediate pressure on the ball carrier. We have a low block, deep defense that frustrates attacking players. We have a mid block that controls space around the defensive lines. And we have formation variations that adopts defense to different game-like situations. So let's take a look real quick at transition phases within the modern game to determine what one of these strategies would be the best and how we can transition away and be a defensive team. So we have an attacking transition and defensive transition. Attacking is going to be quick movements to exploit defensive gaps, where defensive, we need to organize quickly and regain our shape as soon as we possibly can. So when we're attacking, there's going to be 4 key aspects to remember. Reaction time, how quickly the team reacts, it may dictate the result of an effective transition. The speed in which they attack. The quicker the attack, the more likely the defending team is going to be out of position, and you're going to be able to exploit some gaps. Always keep focus on the retention of the ball, maintaining possession of the ball, and using smart passing patterns to develop players, or to allow players to develop confidence and speed on their attack. And also, players should always be scanning the field to find an outlet pass. Quick movements up the field make an attack successful. Now, one thing I will say is, again, we are not going to be a PlayStation or an Xbox coach. We are going to allow the players to scan the field, and if they decide that the best option for them at that point Instead of scanning the field, finding a passing lane, maybe they scan and they see an open lane where they can drive forward. Let's let them do that. So player tasks. Number one, if the player has space to drive, drive forward. React as a unit. Everybody transitions. No matter if you're in a midfield position, you're in attacking or a defensive position, everybody transitions as a unit. And you need to scan the field to find that stretched pass and see if that's available first. On the defensive side, we also have reaction time. How quickly the team reacts may dictate the result of an effective transition. Pressure. Remember, 5 seconds to apply pressure on the ball carrier. The 5-second rule is something that we learned in part 2 of the technical aspects of coaching here. Intensity. Close in and quickly try and force the player to make a mistake. The more intense your attack is, the more flustered that player with the ball is going to be a little bit more, he's going to be off guarded. He's going to try and hurry. He's going to try and find a pass that may end up being intercepted, and now you're transitioning back to the offensive side. Tackling. They should be swift and calculated with support of your team. Do not lunge without having support behind. Essentially, what this means is, if you're a defender and the team is transitioning, coming at you fast, maybe there was a turnover in your defensive third, you do not want to lunge at the ball and end up being beat, because now you're completely out of position. You want to make sure that lunge and that tackle is going to be extremely calculated, and you're attacking properly and kind of in a surfboard position as you're attacking. Lunging should never be an option unless you're kind of desperate and you have really no choice but to win the ball. Let's talk about when to press. So when you're close, tackle only when it's safe and you have the support behind you. If the ball carrier takes a bad touch, maybe this is something where they're trying to transition too fast and the ball got away from them a little bit. The idea here is let's try and maintain possession and let's get the ball back, or let's just put the ball out of play and allow our team to regroup and slow down the transition. Number 3, if a defender is in a one-on-one situation with an attacker, and the caveat is they think that they're going to be able to win that battle. And number 4, if the attacking pass is not weighted properly. So we kind of talked about that a little bit. If the pass is too fast, too slow, maybe a little bit rogue, then you have a chance to pick that pass off and transition your team now back to the attacking side. So there's a lot of content here that we had talked about. These strategies should help maintain a solid defensive shape and regain possession effectively. If you have any questions about the defensive or offensive transitions, or anything in this presentation, I would encourage you to reach out, because there is a lot of content here and there's a lot of theory and a lot of experience behind how each and every one of these elements work to get your team to be a well-oiled and established group. And with that, I will leave you with my favorite quote ever. A good coach can change a game, but a great coach can change a life. And some super smart guy said this, but I ended up finding it on Google at some point. Actually, no, I take that back. I think it was written on a mug that I had that was given to me. And I just love the phrase ever since. It's so true. With that, we're good. We're done. We finished under 35 minutes, which is awesome. God only knows I love to talk. But if you need anything, please email us support@eastcherokeesc.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram at EastCherokeeSC, or feel free, give us a call, 678-653-3838. Talk to everybody soon. God bless.